Welcome to tonight's Yoga for Normal People practice. You'll see I have a few things on my mat today. I have a bolster or a pillow. I like a firm pillow for this. We're going to have a blanket or like a thick towel, and then a pair of blocks or a pair of like pretty good sized books. And I've stacked my blanket on top of my bolster. I'm just going to come down to sit on top of that pile of things here. And I've actually been doing quite a bit of sitting today, and then gave the dog a bath, which then encouraged my back to be like, hey, hello, how are we feeling today? So my low back is sore. So I thought tonight's practice, we could focus on releasing the day's stress in our low back after a long day of sitting. So to honor our bodies, to honor where we are, we're going to come to sit. Gently close your eyes or soften your gaze. And just start by taking a couple of deep breaths. You can gently sigh in and gently sigh out. And maybe with each exhale, imagine that your shoulders are just dropping down a little bit more away from your ears. Take 2 more deep breaths. And once you've sighed out that last deep exhale, just let your breath return back to its normal rhythm. And feel the steady expansion and contraction of your belly. And as you notice that expansion and contraction, imagine a light source within your belly, at the place where you can feel your breath kind of reach down towards your pelvis, down towards the back of your body, your low back. And imagine this soothing white light just tracking your breath through that sort of low back and belly space. And as you feel that white light fill your belly and low back, imagine that light is just softening any kind of tension you may have, especially in the low back, especially if you've been seated a lot. Notice how in this position, you're shaped more like a tripod. You have contact places with the fronts of your shins or your knees, and then a contact patch with your hips. This helps keeps us a little bit more stable, but it also distributes the pressure of sitting upright. So just notice those connections. Notice the places where your body meets the outside world, whether it's the mat, the floor, the support of your bolster, the outer thighs, or if you're sitting in another position, perhaps it's the sole of your feet. Whatever those contact patches are, send that white light from your belly down into those patches. And feel each one of those spaces just soften a little bit. Now that you've taken a few breaths, just to reconnect with your body, just to get back into your own physical space. You can gently just open your eyes, keep your gaze lowered towards the floor if you like. And I'm just gonna kind of lean forward and tug the blanket out from underneath my pelvis, and I'm gonna tug that bolster out from underneath my pelvis as well, so that I'm sitting on the floor. And what I'd like you to do is go ahead and take that bolster off to the left or right side of your mat, whichever side you have space on. And kind of scoot your blocks, get your props out of the way if you need to. But we're going to come down onto our backs. And that bolster should be right off to the left or right side in a place where you can just kind of reach over and tap it or grab it. And we're going to start by just planting our feet on the floor, letting our knees knock towards one another, letting the shoulder blades connect to the earth, and seeing if we can just soften the back body down into the ground. Maybe feeling the contact of the complete length of our back, all the way from the pelvis through the mid-back, up into the space right behind the lungs, the back ribs, back of your shoulder blades, maybe the base of your neck. And just take a few breaths, letting your body kind of settle into the support of the ground. Know that this ground is going to hold you up and meet you where you are. There's a certain amount of comfort in knowing that you have this solid bit of earth beneath us. It's a place we can rest. It's a place we can release into. And once you've let your back body kind of soften and taken a couple of deep breaths, just go ahead and keep that softness, but walk your feet in line with your pelvis, right back in line with your hips. And you're going to kind of draw your feet more towards your butt cheeks, basically. When you're ready, you're just going to press down into your feet, lift your hips just enough so that you can slide that bolster or that couch pillow underneath your pelvis, and then go ahead and just let that pelvis come back down onto the support of that pillow. And if you'd like, you can continue to walk the heels closer to that pillow so that your knees are actually ahead of your ankles, if that feels good. You'll feel a little bit of a stretch into the front body, into the deep psoas, those long muscles that run from our spine all the way down into the tops of our thigh bones. You can also choose to walk your feet further out, which is something I'm going to opt for today. So I'm going to take my legs out straight and let my pelvis just rest and be supported on this bolster. Now you can take your hands to your hips. You can take your hands to either side of that pillow. You can also choose to maybe lift your head, interlace your fingers behind your head, let your elbows drop wide. Let the shoulder blades connect a little bit more with the earth. Just depending on kind of how you're feeling right now. And let the weight of your legs, if you have your legs out long, just kind of drop into the backs of your pelvis. Notice there is a deep back bend here, especially located in the lower lumbar region. That's should feel comfortable. It shouldn't feel pinchy or sharp or bright. It should feel like you're stretching open the front body, a place that is often so closed when we sit for long periods of time during the day. And just let gravity kind of draw those thigh bones down towards the earth. You can let your feet kind of knock out to the sides. If you'd like, you can activate each individual glute muscle. So I'm going to just tense my right glute. It's going to lift my hips slightly, and then I'm going to release. And then I'm going to tense my left glute. It's going to rise slightly, and then I'm going to release. And you can go back and forth, just individually tightening and loosening the muscles in each one of your legs and in across the hips, across the glutes. And that will help kind of drop the energy a little bit more deeply. So it'll help soften those muscles and soften any kind of holding that you may be doing from your long day sitting. So whatever kind of little tension movements you might need, whatever kind of shifting you might need, just take a moment to kind of do a little bit of that. fast or slow, whatever kind of meets your needs. And then go ahead and take one more deep breath in, and on your exhale, just come to stillness. Notice how the exhalation of your breath compresses the front body slightly. There's a softening up under the ribs. Maybe notice how the backs of your shoulders drop a little bit more, become more connected to the earth. If your low back starts to talk to you, if it starts to bother you at any point, you can always bend both your knees and just come back into that nice supported bridge shape. In fact, I recommend it right now. And as we come back into that bridge shape, if you feel like you need a little bit of windshield wipering with the knees, you can do that. Just take a little bit of a organic kind of release of the low back if there's any sort of tension that's been built up after being in that position for a moment. If you feel like continuing to move, feel free to continue to move. I'm in a kind of movie space. My body is like, hey, we need to move a little bit. So I'm going to just rock. But if that doesn't suit you, no need to rock. You can stay still. You can just let your hips rest on the bolster and let your body soften. We'll spend a few more moments just taking advantage of this. And then if you're rocking like me, come back to center. Walk your feet back in line with your pelvis. You can step them back closer to your hips and then lift your pelvis up off that bolster. And you're just going to kind of slide it out from underneath you and let that pelvis come down kind of one vertebrae at a time, like you're trying to draw your pelvis as far away from your shoulders and your head as possible. And let that low back kind of rest. Let the feet come down, knees knock together just for a moment. Maybe take your hands to the tops of your thighs, to that spot right where your pelvis and your thighs meet. And then just for a moment, press those palms down and away on an exhale. And as you inhale and as you exhale, notice how the length of your front body gets a little bit longer. Maybe your belly gets a little bit softer when you take a deep breath in and deep breath out. Just continue to push down into your legs. Take one more deep breath in. And one last breath out. And then drop your hands, take your hands back to your belly just for a moment. And once again, reconnect to the earth. Feel the support of the ground beneath your body, beneath your shoulders, your upper back, mid-back, your low back, and your pelvis. Notice the contact of your feet with the earth. I'm going to take a couple breaths here. And then we're just going to open our eyes. And if you'd like, you can just watch the screen for a moment. I'm going to get us set up for a reclined twist that's a little bit different. So you're going to need your bolster and your blocks. And you're going to take that bolster and you're going to place it behind you. So I'm going to place it on my right side. And that bolster is going to come up right where my low back and mid back are going to land. So that like when I lie down next to this, the center of my back is on that spot. You're also going to take your two blocks and you're going to just stack them out perpendicular to your mat. I'm keeping mine on their low setting. And you're going to take a blanket or a towel and just place that over the top of those blocks. And then what you're going to do is you're going to come onto your left side so that when you bend your right knee comes to rest on those blocks, and you're going to be able to kind of tug that bolster so that it nestles up against your low back. So you're going to come down onto your left side. You can prop your head up for this bit. And if you feel like you don't need the support of the blanket on top of the blocks just to soften them, you can always use that blanket underneath your head. But I'm going to keep mine on the blocks for right now. You're going to pick up your right leg, and you're just going to reach out with that right leg and place it on top of those blocks. Now my leg is straight because this feels right in my body. If you'd like to bend your knee, you can always move that block so that it's underneath your ankle. You just want your leg to feel supported. And then you're going to kind of reach back and tuck that bolster right up against your spine. And once you have that, you're going to let that right shoulder blade start to drop towards that bolster or that pillow. Let your head drop back towards the earth. And find the support of that bolster along your spine. This, for some reason, when I practice this posture, I often feel a lot of sort of comfort and relaxation because I think of the positioning of the pillow behind me. Like it just feels like safe and comfortable and supportive. But play with your props so that it meets you where you need to be met. And turn your gaze towards the sky, and you can either take your right hand down onto the support of the bolster. You can also keep your right hand behind your head, whatever feels kind of great. And see if you can release any tension into the outer hip, the low back, the inner right thigh, which is a place we tend to like pull up from, especially when we're in this orientation to gravity. The inside of your right calf. If you want to let your knee slightly bend. And just kind of notice what everything feels like. This is not a precise sort of practice. This is a find what feels good and kind of go with it. So if your leg's not straight, that's okay. If your hips aren't straight, that's okay. If you're doing something weird with your ankle, totally cool. This is all about sort of giving ourselves the opportunity to reset those muscles we use every day as we sit and work, but also just give our bodies a little bit of a break. Now, if something feels good to you, like I've started to kind of push my right hip down and away to kind of open up my low back a little bit more, go with that. Just kind of explore and feel what kind of speaks to you. I'm kind of liking this tractioning of my right outer pelvis kind of down and away as I press my right shoulder blade back into the support of the bolster. It's not like a real aggressive move, it's just a little bit of pressure, a little bit of a twist. It's just a deepening that feels really nice. So wherever you are, just give yourself the grace. Give yourself the grace and the space to honor whatever kind of movement or non-movement feels good in this moment. And as you breathe, as you rest into the support of the bolster behind your back, I'd like you to return to that idea of that white light in your low belly, into your pelvis, into the back of your pelvis, into that place where you hold a lot of tension, low back, kind of right at the sacrum. And see if you can send that white light to that spot. And just take a couple of breaths. And then when you're ready, you can slowly start to adjust and roll that right shoulder more over your heart. You can lift your head and go slow. The change in orientation is going to be a little bit disruptive, but you're going to go ahead and press down to kind of sit up. And instead of moving our props, we're actually just going to move our bodies. So whichever end your head was at, switch to the other side so that your right side comes down to the mat. That bolster, those blocks, all those props are kind of staying in the same spot. And come on down onto that right side. Adjust yourself so that you find kind of the right space to be in, and you're going to just take that left leg out and rest it on those blocks in that blanket. You're going to reach behind you and probably have to slide that bolster more towards your shoulders. So go ahead and just kind of nestle it up right against the back of your spine so that you feel the pressure of it right against your back. And then all you're going to do is just gently let that left shoulder come back to be supported on that bolster. If you want, you can kind of tuck it closer to your tailbone and just see if you can let your head rest back against the floor. You can rest your head on your arm, or I've turned my gaze towards the sky. I'm reaching my left hand down along the length of the bolster, or I can start to do that same kind of movement where I'm taking hold of the top of my pelvis and sort of just putting my hand on my hip and pressing down and away, and rotating my right shoulder blade back towards that support of the bolster. And then releasing, and maybe doing that a few more times, but just kind of listening to my body, noticing what feels right, what feels kind of not so right in my body, and honoring that. And then once I've kind of found a spot where I want to hang out or put pressure or lessen pressure, I'm going to close my eyes and return back to that idea of that white light in my belly, in my low back. Now imagine it moving with my breath, softening any of that tension, releasing any of that stress or anxiety or anything that's kind of hanging out and remaining in the tissues of your body. So just soften into that white light. Let it soften any of those places that are uncomfortable right now. You may notice that as you hang out in a pose that something else speaks to you or something else draws your attention. You notice, oh, I'm really kind of gripping the right outer line of my right leg. Maybe I should just see what happens if I release and let that go. And then just give it a try. See what happens. This kind of yoga for me is always full of discovery, mostly because we take the time to quiet our minds and listen to some of the more subtle things that happen in our bodies. Just take a few breaths. Let your whole body kind of sink down onto the support of everything that's beneath you, around you. And then once you've taken a few moments here, just breathing into this experience, you can slowly begin to deepen your breath. Begin to draw that left arm back across the body and start to stack that left shoulder over your right, maybe lift your head. And as you come back somewhat to center, slowly, you can take your right leg off those blocks and maybe press down just to sit up for a moment. We're going to come from this position into a supported child's pose. Now that sounds, I know, a little bit strange, but I'm going to promise you it's actually pretty sweet. So go ahead and take your blocks and you're going to place them right in front of your knees. I'm up on my knees, just kneeling. I have mine on my lowest setting, so if you're using books, those will be nice small books. And you're going to put that bolster right over the top, and if you'd like, take that blanket and place it towards the top of your bolster. And what you're going to do is you're just going to tuck that bolster towards your belly, And maybe separate your knees. And you're going to just kind of press down. Slide all of the props underneath you and just come down so that you're in a supported child's pose on the bolster. Now I'm using that blanket beneath my forehead so that I can keep my gaze looking down without sort of blocking any of my breath or blocking my ability to talk to you guys. You can always turn your head off to the left or right. You can always make your blanket a little taller. But here, just let everything kind of settle down. And see if you can kind of take a moment to just do a little kind of wiggle. So press down, rock evenly into one shin and the other, just kind of letting your body shift left and right, a little bit of a shake. See if you can extend the length of your spine so that your head kind of moves more towards the top of your bolster. I have my hands kind of pulling down on my blanket. That's mostly to prevent me from knocking my microphone. But find a place that feels good with your hands, with your arms. And just take a few more moments to wiggle. And then find some stillness. And as you find stillness, as you exhale, see if you can imagine the back of your tailbone is dropping towards your heels and getting heavier. Imagine the length of your back is getting longer. And with every breath, imagine that the space across the backs of your shoulder blades, across the backs of your ribs is expanding and softening. Just let your breath move through your body in a way that allows it to rest. You may notice that in this position there may be some tingling. You may get like a little bit of tingling in your feet. Not to worry, we will be out of this in a moment. But just kind of notice and stay with any kind of sensations that do come up. And then on your next inhale, just slowly begin to lift your upper body up and off the support of those props. Let your head come up last. And you're just going to reach under those pillows or bolster. You're just going to slide those blocks out. You're going to kind of keep that setup of the blanket at the top of your bolster. And you're going to press that bolster up towards the top of your mat. And if you'd like, you can place your blocks right at the very end of your mat. Like right at a place where you think your feet might land if you were going to lay down on that bolster, because that's where we're going next. So what you're going to do is come forward onto all fours. And you're going to start to walk yourself out over that bolster. Maybe tap back with the tops of your feet and just kind of place them right on top of those blocks. And let your belly come forward to meet that support of the bolster or the pillow. And then let your forehead come to rest down. Or if you like, you can get rid of that blanket and let your chin come to rest on top of the bolster. It just depends on kind of body length and torso length and things. So find a place where you are resting on your belly, but you're comfortable enough to close your eyes and just start to go inside. And if you find that you're not comfortable or you need to adjust, feel free to take this kind of final resting pose also on your back or seated. I'm going to sit up just because that's how I want to end my own practice today. So once you've settled in, once you've gotten comfortable in whatever shape you've chosen to finish your practice out this evening with, take a couple of deep breaths, much like those that we took at the beginning of class, just starting by noticing how those breaths feel moving in and moving out of your body. And once you've noticed your breath, begin to just sort of draw your awareness to the very base of your breath, to that place where it reaches down deeply into your belly, where your diaphragm softens down and up, depending on whether you're breathing in or breathing out. And see if you can imagine that white light that we pictured when we first came to sit, when we first came to reconnect with ourselves, when we first came to honor our low backs and take care of them in a way that feels supportive and helpful. And as you imagine that white light moving between your navel and your low back, soothing any tension there, maybe notice how your breath deepens, how your body maybe rises a little bit more on the inhale and falls a little deeper on the exhale. And as you continue to notice this breath, as you continue to imagine this light moving between the low back and the belly button, just softening anything it touches, releasing any tension, allowing any kind of stress to leave the body. Notice if you're holding in any place, maybe the tops of your feet, maybe the jaw, the ears, corners of the eyes, back of the teeth. Maybe you're holding in the outer shoulders, maybe you're holding at the back of the heart. Wherever it is, wherever it feels tense, just send that white light. Send it with love, send it with gratitude, send it with patience. And allow it to soften those places. We'll spend a few more moments just breathing into this softness, exploring the edges and taking a moment to really examine our inner landscape. And once you've taken a moment just to get soft, to get quiet, to send light to the places that need it the most, you're welcome to continue to stay here or set yourself up for a nice restful sleep. Or if you'd like, you can begin to deepen your breath and start to invite waves of movement back into your system. Maybe they start in your toes, maybe it starts in your fingers, maybe it starts in your breath. But invite it back in and slowly Slowly make your way back up to a seated position, using whatever props you feel would best support you. And then once you've come back up to seat, once again notice those contact points, the points of your shins, the connection of your pelvis. Notice how stable and connected you feel now. And allow that stableness and that connectedness to translate to softness, especially in our focus of practice in our low back. Notice how that stability helps inform how much we can relax, how much we can let go. And just let your practice soak in. If you're headed off to sleep, may you rest well. Take your hands to heart center and let the palms press against one another. Allow your thumbs to rest against your sternum and slide your sternum up to meet your thumbs. Know that all the love and light in me bows to and honors all of the love and light in each one of you. May you rest well. Namaste.